All right, good morning, guys. It is Saturday, the 21st of December already. Uh, See if we have any questions. We had a discussion last week, and I wasn't here on Monday, but you guys talked a lot about imitate, and that was interesting, and maybe have some questions on that a bit later. Uh, we talked about the healing of plants and who we are and what we do and how we can heal. And so, are there any questions about anything that was spoken on Saturday? I mean, excuse me, on Sunday or Monday that you guys may have? Any questions on that or anything for that matter? If
Someone had a question to ask me a question about clarification on what we talked about during the course of our discussion about the creation from the committed understanding. And that question had to it referenced ancestors and what does that look like when we talk about our ancestors um, when we talk about them being in the spiritual realm in relationship to the understanding of creation. So, if it's okay, um, I will talk about that in a moment. Unless you want to ask if there are any other questions.
anyone? Yeah, at some point, Pastor, also, I think it was Monday, Audrey asked a question about earth consciousness. I like to go into that a little bit more because that's one of those terms we use all the time.
Okay.
Earth consciousness, yeah. So just how that, what is it, and how is it beneficial to us? But please begin wherever you see.
Okay. Um, in reference to ancestors, uh, we talked about how the we talked about Patara, we talked about Atum, we talked about the waters of Noon, we talked about a lot of things. And what we concluded is that when the Kemites talk about the waters of Noon, they're not talking about water as we see water in this earth. It's talking about actually the uh, um, the universe and its ether or the matter that's in the universe, and it is from the Ptah, which is motion at rest, um, and Atum is considered the words of the word that brought creation into existence because it's Atom, Atom, and we talked about how those atoms are come together and brought into existence the everything that does exist, and it was done at the behest of Elohim, which is also Ptah. And when we talked about that, I think it was kind of clear in relationship to how this physical world came into existence, yet at the same time, spirituality remains and it is the guiding force in our lives, but it's also the force of our growth in the life of the plants and animals in the earth. When it comes to ancestors, I I see them as going back to where they came from, and that is into the mass arena or the of intelligence or thoughts. The I don't see the ancestors as being individuals any more than I see us as being individuals spiritually. We are a collective, and I'm not talking about the Borg. but we are a collective. And I see the ancestors as being a collective as well. They return to the primordial waters or the ether from which they came, and they occupy, not physically but spiritually, they occupy that space of thought. And when we talk about the ancestors guiding us, it is the influence that they have on how we think uh, and how we process. Now you may say, so we don't have any control over that. Yes, we do. When you hear something, you're driving and something tells you there's a policeman down the road. That's a simple example. Now you have a choice. You can slow it down, or you can maintain your speed or speed up. The consequences are on you, and that same principle works in our entire life. And we've simply been attributing those kinds of thoughts to our minds and our earthly intellect, when in essence we are always in communication with the ancestors. They are always speaking. And the difference with us, and even when we make a conscious effort to listen to or to be one with the ancestors, our issue is that we have been, and I can't say educated, but we have been indoctrinated to the extent that we believe that everything is based on our intellect or is based upon what we have received from the environment of academia, when it really isn't. Academia is the thing that has caused us to lose any contact in our minds, of course, any belief in the existence of ancestors. We have been taught that to talk about the ancestors in that regard is demonic, and we've been taught that it's foolish to even believe that someone who transitioned is able to guide or talk to us, and the reason that we hear a voice that's familiar to us, or have an apparition of someone who's familiar to us, is because it's not because they are in that form in the midst of the ancestors. It's because when we hear or see something familiar to us, we are more apt to pay attention to it. And when I talk about sitting uh, in the um, in the midst of the ancestors and lighting a candle, the candle is not to attract them. They're not moth. The candle is not to attract them. I light the candle to honor them. I light a candle or candles to honor them, and that is my way of being expressing my gratefulness for them um, being focused on me at that moment in terms of the conversations that we may have, or the energy that they may release within me, or the thoughts that they may give me. And this whole idea of being with the ancestors does not mean that we are going to hear anything verbal. It's more of an experience than it is of seeing or hearing. And the experience that we have, sometimes we are able to realize what it is at that moment, and in other times we don't. We just see it later on down the road. So with me, for example, my experience with the ancestors has been that when I start teaching, or when I start talking to people about certain things, or that is when I realize the extent to which the ancestors has deposited something in me that is necessary for humanity to receive. Uh, the also when I talk about being with the ancestors, it happens sometimes when I'm asleep, or it happens when I'm sitting, not even expecting it. I began to sense a presence. And when I'm sitting in the den, where I am most of the time, or there are many times I hear movement, and I believe and I embrace the fact that they are the ancestors, that the noises that I hear are ancestors expressing their presence or trying to get my attention. And I know that none of what I'm saying uh, is logical at all, but then spirituality is not logical. Logic is academia, and that is our issue. If we can't explain it, we don't believe it. If we can't see it, we don't believe it. And that's where we lose our sense of being when it comes to relating to the ancestors in such a way that we be still long enough to have that experience, to have have them as an we become their audience or they become ours. So it is really an exchange of thought more so than anything else. Because when you really get down to it, just like the ancestors have left these bodies and they are energy, that's what we are as well. We are energy, and we have never been separated from the ancestors because the spiritual is the spirit is one entity, all with different aspects, but it's one entity. And so this idea of connecting to the ancestors or connecting to spirituality, those words are misnomers. It's not about connection. It's about becoming aware of the presence and having that experience as opposed to audibly having a discussion. So if there are further questions about this at this moment before I continue, please raise them now. Or comments for that matter, because I welcome comments also because you bring so much clarity.
Question. This is Audrey. Good morning. Um, isn't what aren't the ancestors what the Bible talks about as the great cloud of witnesses? And don't witnesses give testimony to the truth of something?
What you're referencing is Paul when he talked about the great cloud of witnesses. And if you look up witnesses in the New Testament from the Greek, it talks about being martyrs. Those who have been martyred for what they believe in. However, what you are saying is absolutely true, is real in a different sense, though, than what we have been presented in church.
Right,
Yes.
right. And it's interesting to me that all indigenous people talk about ancestors. And even today, most religions other than Christianity still talk about ancestors and do certain things to honor their ancestors. Even here in Mexico, they do, even though most people are Catholic, but they still do certain things to honor their ancestors. But not traditional American Christianity.
Well, you know, Audrey, Catholicism adopted a lot of the ways of the indigenous people in order to get them to embrace Catholicism.
Yeah.
So, and that ancestral recognition is based upon the spirituality through generations. The only people who I have found who don't recognize or embrace ancestry are Europeans, and especially Christianity. Christianity is the one that says it's demonic.
Right. And why would it not be truth to that if everybody in the world does it except them?
Because they're the ones who determine what's real and what's not.
Or so they think.
Absolutely. One of the examples of that is I was listening this morning and this guy was talking about the shooting at the CEO in New York, and someone had sent something into him saying that it was not about glorifying the murder. It was about pretty much, my words, not his, bringing attention to the insurance industry. And he said it was glorifying a murder. But see, the problem with that insurance executive who was murdered is that no one was listening. No one was listening to what people were saying about the insurance company. And guess what? They still are not listening. These people are not glorifying him. They are saying somebody is finally taking notice to what we've been screaming about all the time. No one is glorifying the murder. At least most people are not anyway. I know I'm not. But so what am I saying? They're still not listening. And who is the they that's not listening? European men, white men are still not listening. And when you don't listen, as King said, that a riot is the voice of the voiceless. And that's pretty much what's happening. He talked about how privileged the kid is, and how and what kind of family he came from, well educated, blah blah blah, and so on and so on. And they don't understand this is not about being privileged or not being privileged. This is about caring about people and their plight. So what am I saying? I'm saying that European men have always felt like whatever they say is right and everybody else is wrong. So what European men did with ancestry is said that it is of the devil. And I repeat, when Elijah Muhammad said that Europeans, especially white men, are the devils, he was not talking about they look like the devil. He was talking about actions of the devil. And so the actions of what is deemed to be demonic is very prevalent in that kind of mindset. Anyone, thank you, Audrey. Anyone else?
Good morning. I just wanted to mention, since we talked about health in the beginning, when you say you have a like a gut feeling or something like that, there is a process of thinking that is occurring in your body wherever there is like a bundle of nerves of a sufficient density. It becomes easier to feel anyway. But what that means is there are messages, energies, and sort of attempts to reach out through certain kinds of consciousness that are attempting to reach us in all kinds of ways. And your gut is one of the ones, one of the methods of reaching our awareness. And so there are sort of information being passed back and forth on an energetic and spiritual level throughout your body. But one of the ways your ancestors can contact you is on that level, because it's just one of the available ones if our heads are too filled with other stuff to be able to pay attention. So when you can clean out your gut and, you know, in general, your body, those kinds of messages become much easier to receive and recognize. What are you saying?
Digest.
Yeah.
Nick, that really resonates. That really resonates, because if we are one consciously, then our body mirrors the spiritual, and there are a myriad of ways that either organs in the body and skin, gut, whatever, attempt to relay information to us about our environment, particularly our spiritual environment, if we are attuned to it and if we are in that frequency. And so it's just not with the five senses. That's the point of ST's teaching, that it's much, much more. So what you're saying really resonates, and the gut is one way, but there are so many other ways that physically the body attempts to tell us or show us the spiritual messaging.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. This is GC in Philly, and I think that we were given not only an example, but we were spiritually informed by Regina as she spoke of what she talked about, but I heard it in the spiritual realm when we talked about health. And so, that's just an example of us just being able to appreciate looking at it in the natural, but at the same time, I just heard her spirit, her voice, speaking in an intuitive way where it was information that was shared, but I felt it, very deeply in terms of her spiritual desire to express it. Looking in the past in terms of just how, we have studied, I was thinking about it a little bit, when I was in college, I was actually taking courses, like in kinesiology, biology, and I was taking all these courses, but it would seem like it was something that wasn't forced, but something that I had to do. But retrospectively, when I look at it now, I see the importance of the spiritual science. I see the importance of being able to understand what does it mean today. And so I think that, speaking on the subject of health, is important. And as you said, Nick, I think is that intuitive instinct, that gut feeling, that mother wit, that guides us. And I think that's all part of what, we're discussing now. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. Thank you for letting me share. I'm done.
Also that the ancestors speak of the whole idea of the heart and the center of our emotions in that region of the gut. The heart, they don't place the heart in the center or the left center of our chest. It's in the abdominal region where they talk about the heart. And when you are depressed, where do you feel it the most? It is in that area. I'm done. Ron, I think you were getting ready to say something.
Well, I thought about Regina too when Nick was saying what he was saying, like George did, because from what I understand, her to say, if we're not healthy, if our bodies are not operating as intended, that affects that vibration, would it not? If you're having digestive issues and having problems in that area, the importance of that area. The other one I mentioned that I couldn't think of was inflammation or leaky gut and inflammation. But if you're having those problems, wouldn't that also affect that type of vibrations and feelings?
It does, Ron, and that's why it is known that children who are hungry find it more difficult to learn. Anything that affects that area of your body has a positive or an adverse effect on the vibrations. Your body your body is not you, but you are what? You're in sync with that body. And when that body is not receiving what it should be receiving, then you're very much aware of it because it does indeed affect the vibration. But think about it this way also. What vibration does it affect? Why is it if we are one unit spiritually, if we are the universe and the universe is us, if we are in rhythm with the universe, why is it that we cannot, our bodies are have an adverse effect on our rhythm if it does not receive what it should?
Mm-hmm.
As long as we are in this body, it is our responsibility to keep it in rhythm and to keep it healthy. And when it is not healthy, we are very much aware of it. Our bodies does not tell us when it's not healthy. We are aware that it's not healthy. We are aware of what's happening to it in many cases, but we fail to do anything about it because we have been told how to respond to this vibration that is different than our normal vibration. It is not the body that's vibrating at all. It is our energy within that body that is not vibrating with the universe, that is not in rhythm with the universe. And even when you're hungry, you find it very difficult to process because your body is not in rhythm and it's not time for you to leave it yet. So you have to bring it back to a state of being in rhythm. So what happens is we put food in it, even if it doesn't digest, to make it feel like it's in rhythm, when in actuality it is not. Yet it still gives us opportunity to be able to process differently than we would if we did not put the food or whatever in our bodies to make sure that we feel like we have ingested what is needed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep. And I wanted to add, we were talking about the senses and how the gut and other things are sort of related to the senses. I forget where exactly I learned it or read it, but the Kemites or the Kemetians or the Egyptians recognized, I think it was hundreds of senses. And even we say there's 5 senses, but that's a sort of pop culture thing. Even in sort of medical science or whatever, there's technically more. For example, your sense of balance. But there are all kinds of, let's say, spiritual and energetic antenna that we have that are in various states of disrepair due to our diet, due to our thinking, etc. And when we can learn to sort of clear out all the, Ron, you were mentioning inflammation, when you can clear out all the stuff coming up the works, you can be able to receive those things much more clearly. Yeah, thank you.
Along those lines, I have a question I like to ask, and maybe right into it. On last Sunday, Kathy asked a question, and Pastor went and talked about Imhotep, and Barb kind of came back with that and talked about we started off talking about plants, but she started talking about uh changing things, changing the getting things back to its original purpose and its original intent, and it made me think about meditations, and the original intent of these bodies, I think, has also been lost. So that discussion, and you guys can go back and think of what was said, how we looked at that. But if we can talk about changing or not changing, but recognizing and becoming aware of, like pine needle tea or certain plants have this kind of healing purposes. What about this body? Does that also apply to that? Is there, have we gotten away from the original intent of what we were made to be, and the energies that we were made to hold? And can we change that through our meditations and desires, the way we were talking about last week?
Yes, we can. We can change it through our meditation, our desires.
And healing, does that also include healing?
Yes, we have the ability to do anything that's necessary to maintain our bodies. When we were talking about Imhotep, we were talking about how Imhotep determined what just different plants, the medicinal nature of different plants in the earth. And we were talking about the pine needle tea. That was simply an example of one of the uses of plant life in the earth. And it had nothing really to do with our body other than bringing our body back in rhythm to where it should be. Um, and it's not our bodies only process food. Our bodies do not process us spiritually, neither does it process anything that we see with our eyes. We we process that. Excuse me. We are the determining factor how that energy is used, meaning that we determine, let me clear my throat. We determine whether or not that we are going to take something like the pineal tea for a cold or for whatever we ingest it. It is not our bodies that make those determinations. Our bodies do not determine anything. We receive we receive the signals from the body in terms of what it's experiencing. The spirit is like a diagnostic tool. Of course, it's much more than that, but the simplification of it is no different than being a diagnostic tool, diagnosing the feelings or the experiences of the body, and making every effort to understand what it needs. And we have been educated, or we have been indoctrinated to the point where we don't pay attention to it at all. The first thing that we do is reach for some medication, or we pick up the phone and call the doctor to get an appointment. Well, when I and others were growing up, that was not the case. What happened, the first thing happened, people reaching for remedies from plant life, from the elements in this earth that were designed for the express purpose of keeping our bodies in rhythm with the earth, and so that we would be able to function more clearly spiritually. Yet we lost our awareness of that because of the mass efforts of indoctrination that we received. I mean, we were even told that the things that we were given when we were growing up for different ailments did not work. We were told that they were what do you call those things when you're doing a blind study? You have the real mess, and you have a placebo. We were told
Yeah.
a placebo effect when they really did. They had a medicinal effect, but we bought into it because we were so indoctrinated into believing that Europeans knew everything. And whatever we thought was right when they told us it wasn't, we said, okay. And that's how we function. And now we've gotten to a place where we're beginning to become more aware of the fallacy of what we embrace and what we were taught. And now we're making every effort to embrace the desire to become aware of those things that escaped us because of our ignoring them. Does that make sense, Ron?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nick?
Yes. I just wanted to, since you mentioned the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a perfect example of your ability to heal yourself. It only goes so far when it's tested medically and scientifically, etc., because there is only a certain degree to which your body instinctually can sort of guide itself. The rest must come through the sort of clear pathways that are more mental and spiritual and more conscious and proactive. But even on a basic level, the sort of messaging receiving system that the body is, which is the sort of expression of a certain message and energy that it is able to show us that it has the ability to heal itself to a certain extent. The placebo effect should not even exist at all. and yet it does. And there's a lot of sort of psychosomatic and psychological reasons for it to exist. And I'm saying that those things are the beginning, the sort of the tip of the iceberg that penetrates much deeper into the nature of consciousness and what it is in terms of expressing this physical body. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question. Doesn't that work the other way around too? Can't we make ourselves sick by, because I'm thinking about that thing we talked about the other day, that's on the Shabaka stone, the hearing, seeing, and breathing comes into being in the heart, and out of the heart, the tongue speaks. So if you're like, we're hearing every day on TV, you know, you need this or that medication for this or that symptom or condition or blah, blah, blah. And we're hearing that every day of our lives. So we're hearing it. And sometimes even that kind of thing can take root in our heart. Because, you know, if you get this little feeling in your leg and restless leg syndrome, whatever. So I think it can work the opposite way too, that we can determine that we're sick when we're actually not. Physically, that is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an important part of it, that hearing, seeing, and breathing, and then letting it settle in your heart.
Audrey, it's been shown statistically since
Yeah.
the Reagan administration in the 80s allowed the pharmaceutical companies to advertise their medicines, that people have become sicker, and they are making more appointments with the doctor and telling the doctor what they need based upon the symptoms that they're given on TV.
Right.
And that has enhanced the power of the insurance companies and pharmaceuticals over people. And we are it's like everything else. We are the perpetuators of the worst things that can happen to us. People are. We are the perpetuators of that. Because to go to the doctor and tell him what medication you need because you're self-diagnosing and he agrees with you, that's a problem. And to understand that the insurance company counts your usage of your insurance as a financial loss. It's called a medical loss. That's a problem. But we self-perpetuate those things, and we even bought into the lie that there's nothing you can do about it because they're too big. And that in itself causes us to think with our mind. When we process with our minds, we only see ourselves as individuals who are helpless. And we only see ourselves as individuals who are at the mercy of large corporations that are ran by white men who care absolutely nothing about anything except money. When we process with our minds. Think about it this way. During the 60s, when people were in the street in large numbers, it was processing with the mind to do it, but the actions actually came from something deep-seated spiritually. If we become one voice, then we can force people to listen. But because that one voice was based on a earthly response, the listening was not what we thought it was going to be. The listening was for the purpose of manipulation. The listening was to hear what was being said and to produce a document that purported to address what was being said, but really left so many loopholes until nothing was really addressed. And that was because we were processing with our minds. But the unicity of it came from a deep-seated spiritual sense of oneness. Does that make sense? And now what we are doing, we are actually reversing that. We are processing spiritually and influencing the mind, the thoughts in the earth, and that is where that is the reason we are able to see the differences that we are experiencing. As long as we cried out in numbers in the streets, nothing really was exposed. But when we start looking at it and dealing with the spiritually, putting it in the macro, even though that was challenged, we still kept doing that, and we have a history with that now because we have been shown the results of that. But beforehand, what we were processing with was earth consciousness, Ron. Can you see that?
Okay. Keep going. I'm listening.
Earth consciousness. When you are thinking with your mind, that's earth consciousness. That is where the choice is. You have a choice. You can process with what your eyes see, which is earth consciousness, or you can process with who you are and not with what your eyes see, but what your eye know the truth to be. When you are seeing or experiencing with your eye, it is totally different than when you are responding to what you see with your eyes. Anything that I'm sorry, whenever we process with the rudiments of our material environment, then we are expressing our consciousness in an earthly manner. When we are processing it based upon the spiritual essence of our being, then we are processing it spiritually, and that processing spiritually overshadows, should anyway, overshadows the thought process of the mind, because the objective is to bring the mind under submission to the essence of who we are, the spiritual essence of our being, as opposed to the opposite. Religion influences, religion takes dominance over our spiritual essence. And our spiritual essence is supposed to be dominant over everything, because religion itself is non-existent when it comes to having a positive effect on us spiritually. It only has a divisive effect on us. And that is the reason we have so many different denominations. And within the denomination, we have so many different sects. And we believe everything and nothing at all. We believe everything about Christianity and nothing about Christianity at all. However, that is an impossibility when we start looking at it from a spiritual perspective, because spirituality doesn't change, neither can it be manipulated. Questions or comments?
I think it's very interesting that we see things like RFK Jr. saying things like he's going to get artificial ingredients out of food, and there's been sort of surface level talk about getting rid of pharmaceutical ads on TV. And this is getting more socio-political, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, because I think that what they're really going to do is allow corporations to do whatever they want. But it is interesting that those kinds of things are coming up, because in their sort of chaotic nature, they allow, I think, things like that to come through that could potentially be beneficial. Whereas the sort of democratic establishment would have been much more calcified, or would have never allowed those things to even come through. So I think it's a interesting situation we're in, one where the sort of core spiritual desire that pervades this country, or whatever, attempting to become a nation, is the one that will determine whether or not more of those things come through and are able to establish themselves, more of those potentially positive things, despite the sort of outward administration being a chaotic one.
And they will have to if we're going to survive. Spirituality has to be dominant. I mean, when you look at one man making an effort to rule the world, and, you know, people looked at Elon Musk as being in America and doing what he's doing with Trump, but he uses money all over the world to do the same thing in European nations. So he could become the emperor of the world because of his money. And if that, you know, if we were not standing in the gap, I do not believe that the Creator would allow it to get this far anyway. So the effectiveness of what we do is essential for the deliverance of humanity from the throes of corporate greed, and to free colonies like America from corporate greed and from deadly control, from the control rather of a mindset that cares nothing about people at all. Ron, you about to say something?
Thank you. No, I'm okay. Thank you.
What about the Earth consciousness? Was that clear?
Yeah, I hear things differently when I go back and visit the videos. I guess I hear it in a little more detail. And that's just one of those things we talk about all the time. Just want to make sure everybody had an understanding of it and why it is used so much. Uh, you know, we're talking about what our awareness and what we value and how that really affects our meditations. Uh, I think one of the things that was said in the video, I think Barb said it, talked about the inauguration coming up, and I listened to it. How many of us has given thought to that? Uh, we know what we've created space for, the loving kindness, and we're in a place now where we're in action. We are a verb. We're moving. We are the loving kindness that is in action. And now is the time to take those steps. So just a lot said that kind of got my attention. That's all. So
And I want to also say to those um, who may not have been present when Audrey mentioned the Shabaka stone earlier. For those who may not understand it, Shabaka stone is tantamount to what we call the Bible, as well as every textbook, because the Shabaka stone consists of our spiritual understanding of not only creation but how we live with each other, as well as it consists of understandings of architecture, how we build places to house our bodies, and how we deal with agriculture in terms of feeding our bodies. It covers everything, and that means that everything that in this earth is spiritual. And it did not become a separation it did not become separated rather from material and spiritual. It did not become separated until the European mindset became dominant. Even the Native Americans, they would follow the buffalo herds, and the buffalo would cut out one buffalo for them to kill. And they would take that buffalo and use every piece of it because of their gratefulness that the creator of everything gave them that animal for survival. And then along came the Europeans who killed buffalo to sell. And then the hunting aspects of it was for survival. But then came the Europeans. Now hunting is a sport. Killing something is a sport. And the scripture clearly says that to kill a bull is no different than killing the man. So if killing an animal becomes a sport, then it becomes a sport to kill a person, especially when you see them as being less than. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And Christianity has never really stood against that or made any connections between that kind of thing. Christianity looks at the Old Testament when it's beneficial, but there are parts of the Old Testament that speaks to the idea of killing the bull is no different than killing a man. I did not tell you to make these sacrifices. The Old Testament says that. However, when it comes to that, they reject that in favor of Jesus talking about his blood was given for our deliverance. Well, that's a blood sacrifice. That's the killing of an animal. So if it's not true there in the Old Testament, with the Creator saying that, then what makes it true in what is called the New Testament? So there are discrepancies there that does not make sense at all. And the bottom line that I'm getting at is this: it doesn't matter what blood you shed. If you shed in blood of an animal because you're hungry, that's one thing. But if you shed in the blood of an animal for sport, that's a whole different ballgame. If I heard Rush Limbaugh years ago say, if men loved deer that much, they would sell it in the grocery store. This is not about a love for deer. This is about a love for killing. And you're desensitizing when you teach a child that it's a sport to kill and to skin an animal. You're desensitizing them to the ending of life by those methods, and that is one of the major problems in this country when it comes to those kinds of things. And sad to say, however, I do believe that we are going to have more experiences of that, and because that's the only thing seemingly get people attention. Think about it. This one CEO being killed got more attention than those kids who were killed in school shootings. There was more of an outcry from the elites, both Republican, Democrat, business, all the media, then there was an outcry for these kids who got killed. The kids who were killed were in the news for maybe a week, and then it was over. But this CEO is still in the news. And look at the parade, the charade that they did when they brought him into New York. I mean, come on. The mayor is in the entourage with all of these policemen. This is to show where their emphasis are. None of that was seen with any of the people who killed those kids in school. None of it. Yes, they were dead. They killed them, yes, but nobody talked about the killer the way they talked about. They are talking about the one who killed the CEO. And these are things that we really don't pay any attention to. But this is the downfall of this colony. And this is the way this colony has functioned. This English colony, this British colony has functioned ever since it's been here. And so the things that we are addressing, the food, the violence in our environment, the religion that has duped us, all of these things are necessary for us to unpack so that they can be in the macro, so that people will be further awakened to what's going on for the express purpose of bringing peace to a dangerous world, to a violent world. I'm done.
Hey, any questions, y'all?
Good morning, Ron. This is Kathy. I apologize. I was not able this morning to get to my phone earlier. But to add on to what Pastor just said, if you think about Dylan Ruth, when he was when they got him, when they was arrested, they took him to McDonald's and he had a meal. And, you know, and everybody saw nothing wrong with that. And they treated him like, well, it's just another day in the line of duty and you're hungry, so you killed 9 people, so but we're going to stop and get you some food. And it's just a big contrast. But I want to go back, and I'm just going to interject this quickly. I want to go back to what Pastor said earlier about the body will not make choices for you, but the body will show you the result of the choices that you make for it. And I don't want to take us too far back to the beginning of the conversation, but you asked that question about leaky gut. Well, the thing about this body is that we really are fearfully and spiritually made, wonderfully made, because inside of your body is a whole metabolic process that starts from the moment you ingest food. And as it's going down the esophagus all the way to your stomach has acid in it all the time to break down the food and draw the nutrients from that food so that it can be used to really sustain the body in the way that it is supposed to. Unfortunately, when we do not ingest what we're supposed to ingest, the body it goes through that process and it goes other places where it's not supposed to go and pass through the body like it's designed to do. Unfortunately, we make wrong choices all the time. For example, if I ingest too much animal protein, that goes into the bloodstream, that goes into the arteries, it hardens the arteries and inflammation is formed. Leaky gut says, now I ingested the wrong thing and there's no place for all of this to go. So the acid burns through the lining of your stomach and now you're leaking this acid that you're not supposed to leak. And one of the craziest things that I've not understood, the only thing that I've ever known that will go through that whole process and survive is corn, kernels of corn. So that tells me that we're not even supposed to ingest a lot of corn. But I just wanted to interject that because we talked about the rhythm of everything that's in the universe. There is a rhythm, a rhythmic process in your body that's spiritual that goes on. It has a physical outcome, but it's spiritually designed because there's no way all of this acid could live in your body and not eat through the lining of your body anyway if it wasn't spiritual. So everything that we're talking about this morning, the gut feeling and all of these gut reactions, all of these things are processed through a rhythm and a system that the Creator put in our bodies to just help regulate us. And when we are out of rhythm through what we eat, that's when we have all of these different diseases and all of these things. And I apologize for taking us all the way back, but I could not get to my phone this morning, and I wanted to say that. So thank you for allowing me to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, this morning when Regina was talking, we were not recording. I didn't want her to go too far since we weren't recording. And so if you guys just let Pastor know when you're ready, we will have this discussion because I think it's worth it. And I love the way you tie it and make us see it in a spiritual way. That's beautifully done, and that's worthwhile. So good discussion. Anybody else in anything else to grab our attention?
Hey, Ron, this is Charles.
Hey, Charles,
Hey.
can barely hear you, man.
Uh,
Speak up, Charles.
what I was getting ready to say, how do creation is groaning because us to get it right? So how this fits in this? Because I'm hearing something in it, but I don't understand what I'm hearing inside of me. So how do creations crying out to us to get it right?
Good question. Very good question. Excellent question for Ron to respond to.
I'm about to say you said that 3 times. You can go ahead. Go ahead and answer the mayor's question. Let's reverse roles. I'll say, good question, Charles. Okay.
When it talks about all the creation groaning for us to get it right, it's talking about for us to become aware of who we are and function as such. For us to, when we what's the groaning? What does it look like? When we talk about we see rather the destruction of hurricanes and storms. We see the mass destruction of fires in nature. These are now. Don't get me wrong. Storms, rain, and fires are normal, but they are now at the extent where they have become destructive to humanity. And until we bring balance to the earth, the physical environment is not going to be responsive to this peace. The physical environment is responding to the chaos that we are experiencing every day. And if you think about it, we've talked about this before, but I think it warrants a reiteration, and that is um, the hurricanes that come to this country start at the same place. Dick Gregory said hurricane is a female, it's an African woman, um, wreaking havoc because of what happened to her children. Uh, the, the hurricanes follow the same course as the ships followed when they brought us out of Africa. So I see that as an example of a response. Also, we talked about the dust. The dust that comes from the Sahara Desert and goes into the Amazon in South America is what keeps the Amazon functional. However, here lately, that same dust has been spreading into the U.S., coming in at the southeastern part of the U.S. and traveling across the southern parts of the U.S. And
Pastor,
yes,
back up a minute. You said that dust keeps the Sahara functioning. Is that what
yes,
you said? Okay,
yes,
explain
to
that.
the Sahara. Not Sahara. I'm sorry, to the Amazon.
Okay,
Yeah. Uh,
explain that, please.
the Amazon is the ecosystem for the country, for the world.
Okay,
And damage to the ecosystem of the Amazon damages the entire eco environment of the world, the ecosystem of the world. And the life of the Amazon is inextricably tied to the dust that leaves the Sahara and goes into the Amazon across the ocean.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Any other questions about that? And what has it been, about 5 years more since we've begun to notice? It's been a little bit longer than I think the dust coming from the Sahara also coming through into the United States. And if memory serves me correctly, and you guys, we've been together for quite some time. So if memory serves me correctly, when we began talking about the necessity in exposing everything, that is when that dust became more prevalent. I didn't pay it any attention then, but when we look at it retrospectively, if I think I'm correct in that it became more and more prevalent in the discussions, not of ours, but also of the media and the scientists trying to understand why. Am I correct? Do you guys remember that in the same way?
I don't remember.
You don't remember it, but you remember
Yeah.
the dust?
Yeah, I
Don't you?
think so.
Okay. Audrey?
Yeah, it's been the last few years that we've been discussing it.
Yeah.
And it's been redirecting up away
Right.
from the Amazon up into North America.
And the message there is what? What does that mean?
Could very well. This is what I think it means. No supposition. This is what I believe it means. That it's a sign, a signal of the nutrients for the ecosystem of the world, the Amazon. Now, this spiritual journey that we are on has become the ecosystem for spirituality in the earth.
Hmm.
And I believe it's a physical manifestation of a spiritual truth. And that spiritual truth is the ancestors' focus is with us. Why? There had to be a reason that we were brought to this colony. There has to be a reason that our being in this colony is very important to the rest of the world. We are in this, we are Moses in a colony. We are Moses in a tight place. Moses is not the person, but the reality of what that is. We are here to draw out of people the material God that they worship. We are here to draw out of them those things that causes humanity to think antithetically to spirituality. And the thing that we are here to draw out of humanity is a belief in religion and an embracing of the God of this world, which is money. So our efforts are to be the ones who leads humanity to the land of promise. And the land of promise is a place, it's a consciousness in this earth of peacefulness. Make sense?
It does. Thank you.
I'm sticking to it. And I think that's what's happening now. We are drawing everything from under the cover, and it's becoming visible in a material way, but also is awakening the soul of humanity. This kid who did the shooting, he came from a privileged life. He came from a life where he never had to struggle for anything. So why is it that he would abandon all of that to do what he did for the benefit of those who are suffering from the greed of insurance companies? Why would he do that? It has to be something that pricked him, something that touched him, that pushed him in that direction to do that. Now, am I saying that is justified by murdering somebody? That is not what I'm saying. However, it's neither justified for the insurance company to cause death because of their greed. One man was killed, that's murder, yes. But how many murders have taken place because the insurance company refused to approve somebody's cancer treatment? Where's the balance in that? Any questions about that? I mean, does that make sense to you guys?
Yes, Pastor. And I would just say, in reference to what you're saying, is that we look at it in terms of living in this world from the mindset of the mind of a people, where I think we're speaking in reference to looking at the heart soul of a being. And so with those two contrasts is something that, again, RD had mentioned earlier, in terms of us being able to hear things, see things, and what we may believe. But I think that as we look at, the Kemetic teachings and philosophy, when it comes back to virtues, it goes back to what are our thoughts? What are our words that we're speaking? And more importantly, what are our actions? And those are the three of the, most important of the 10 virtues. But at the same time, again, I see that as being the contrast between politics, greed, and religion, and looking at it with regards to our journey where we are and being able to, put it out there in the macro spiritually. How do we continue to move with the spirit and not the mind, but the heart and the soul? I'm done. I just want to share those thoughts.
I see that. Anyone else? Ron?
Right. Are we done? Any other questions or comments?
I have a
Charles, did that help you?
Yes, sir, it helped. And the reason I said that, it was like, that's the reason why we together pulling everything out of the atmosphere into our soul and trying to turn everything back around the way it's supposed to be. That's what I was feeling when I said that. Now my other question is, when the 12 was sitting around the table and they was talking, breaking bread, drinking wine, the blood. And Jesus said, one of you is going to betray me. And he was talking about Judas. So that guy, which Bill was talking about, on the news of shooting and stuff, we all is born with something to do. And so he probably got mistreated when he went to the doctor's office and all that right there. And like Reb said, a lot of people has been duped like that with the insurance and stuff. So how did Judas tie into this?
What do you mean?
What I mean by everybody is born to do something, good or bad. So Judas was born to betray. Like the word said, God said he's gonna betray. Jesus said he was gonna betray him, and he said he was born to do this.
Judas comes from Judah. And Judah means to praise, or one who praises. So if he's talking about a betrayal of praise versus the energy of deliverance, what does that look like? Christianity is Judas, it's the betrayal, because it is false praise. It is pseudo praise. It teaches you that your deliverance comes through one who died on a cross and whose blood was shed for you. Yet we understand that human sacrifice is antithetical to the scriptures, antithetical to the Kemetic understanding of spirituality. And if I teach you something that's antithetical or something that's the opposite of what is written in Kemetic understanding of spirituality, then I become a betrayer. I know I'm betraying you, even if I'm not aware of it, I'm betraying you. But I do believe that the 97% of all people who stand in the pulpit know that they're betraying people. And the reason I say that is because they make no efforts to find out whether they are right or wrong. They don't care as long as they are being paid. So to me, that is the false praise. That is the pseudo praise that is represented by Judah being antithetical to the deliverance from the environmental elements that keeps us in bondage. And by environmental elements, I'm talking about the government money, etc., that keeps us, education especially, that keeps us in bondage. Does that make sense? Charles?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ron, Nick, Audrey, Kathy, anybody? Does that make sense?
You tie in to Judas being the Greek for praise for Judah. That's something I had not considered. I like that.
Thank you. I know we're close to the end. And I say this often. I don't know whether I say it often enough. The more aware we become of who we are spiritually, the more we have to be cognizant of what comes out of our mouth and what we allow to reside in our thoughts. Because when it resides in our thoughts, eventually will escape our lips and influence the action not only of ourselves but other people.
This call will be recorded.
So being cognizant of who we are keeps us keeps us in a space where we
This
monitor
call is no longer being recorded.
what we say and what we do. I'm looking at, I'm trying to figure out why it stopped recording. Sheldon, are you on?
I think the Zoom is still recording. I think
Yeah.
maybe somebody on the phone was trying to record it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
still recording. It's somebody else.
Oh, okay, there was somebody on the phone. Okay, thank you. I lost my thought, my train of thought. Oh, being cognizant of what we say, because what we say is not just speech anymore. It's not just, this is not a lesson. We are making declarations. We are making determinations. When the tongue speaks, when you're aware of who you are or whether you're not aware of who you are, there is a response to that, because our words influences our environment. And if we are aware truly of who we are and the need for righteousness to prevail in this space that we call earth, then what we say has a bearing on everything that happens around us, that happens in this environment. And so if we say that you are the creator of your own environment by virtue of what you say and do, then we are the creator of the environment at large by virtue of what we say and do. So when I'm making statements like about Judas or about the dust, I'm very cognizant of what I'm saying, because I do understand that declarations are the results of making declarations like that, of declaring things to be. The results of that is seen in a manifestation in this earth. So be very cautious about what you say and what you allow to to reside in your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, sounds like a good place to ponder what has been said, and good discussion. We'll pause here and resume tomorrow at 11 a.m. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody.